So this section is going to talk about some famous people, notable figures from the 1920s. On the morning of May 20th, 1927, Charles Lindbergh left New York City for Paris, France, in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. He became the first to fly solo and non-stop across the Atlantic Ocean. His flight would take 33 and a half hours, and cover 3,500 miles. Listen to this song written to honor the American Eagle, Charles Lindbergh.
Lindbergh, oh what a flying fool was he. Lindbergh, his name will live in history. Over the ocean he flew all alone, gambling with fate and with dangers unknown. Others may take that trip across the sea upon some future day. But take your hats off to lucky Lindbergh, the eagle of the USA.
Upon his return to New York City, they gave him the largest ticker tape parade ever seen up to that day, and President Calvin Coolidge awarded him the Distinguished Flying Cross. Listen to the president present Lindbergh with this honor.
As President of the United States, I bestow the Distinguished Flying Cross as a symbol of appreciation for what he is and what he has done upon Colonel Charles A. Lindbergh.
On a goodwill tour to Mexico, he met the ambassador's daughter, Anne Morrow, whom he married in 1929. They traveled all around the world mapping air routes for new airlines. However, their story was not to be happily ever after. Their son, Charles, was kidnapped and later found dead in 1932. An immigrant carpenter named Bruno Hampton was found guilty of the crime and put to death in 1936. However, it was never actually proven that Hampton committed the crime. Another notable figure was Henry Ford. Henry Ford revolutionized the American automobile industry. His mass-produced, cheap automobiles changed America. His mass production system was based on the assumption that the great mass of workers were lazy, dishonest, and stupid. His invention of the one-man tractor was intended to save Americans' farms. He was on speaking terms with Hitler and Lenin and did business with both. He assembled one of the largest anti-Semitic libraries in the world. His dream was to produce a car so cheaply and pay such a high wage that the makers of the car could afford to buy one. He believed in the common man, but the battle between his hired henchmen and the unions is a classic tale of brutality. The question remains, was he a benefit or a bane to mankind? Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X are names you have heard of. But another civil rights leader also partook in the Black Pride movement. Marcus Garvey was a social activist born in Jamaica who founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, in 1914. In 1916, he moved the UNIA headquarters to New York City and launched a weekly newspaper, The Negro World. In it, he promoted his message of Black pride. He even tried to foster a black colonization movement to Liberia. His movement died out in 1923 when he was convicted of mail fraud. He was sentenced to a 5-year prison term and deported to Jamaica upon release. Marcus Garvey said, "For man to know himself is for him to feel that for him there is no human master. For him nature is his servant, and whatsoever he wills in nature, that shall be his reward." Watch this video on Marcus Garvey.
A black printer from Jamaica who came to New York in 1916, Garvey built a following of more than 500,000 members by championing racial pride, economic independence, and self-rule. In his African Orthodox church, worshipers could glorify a black Christ and a black Virgin Mary. The pomp and spectacle of his many auxiliary organizations, like the Universal Black Cross Nurses, and Black Eagle Flying Corps appealed to the pride of working-class African Americans, whom Garvey encouraged to establish and support their own businesses.
Another notable figure was Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth entered the Major League Baseball in 1914 by joining the Boston Red Sox and played there until 1919. He was traded to the New York Yankees for a record $125,000. In 1927, he slammed a record 60 home runs that stood until 1961. Listen to this call of one of his 714 career home runs.
There's the windup. Here's the pitch. It's a slow curve low, and the base swings. It's a long one going out toward right center. Singler's backing up against the wall. He can't get it. It's in there. Another home run for the Bambino. So the Babe hits his second home of the day.
On one hand, he was a hero to children and donated to orphanages and children's hospitals. In fact, much of his estate was left to the Babe Ruth Foundation for underprivileged children. At the same time, he was a hard-drinking, heavy-smoking womanizer, hardly a positive role model for children. Once again, he's an excellent example of the contradictory terms in the 1920s. The greatest athlete in the world. What a huge title to carry. Jim Thorpe was voted the Athlete of the Century in 1950 by an Associated Press panel. In 1912, he won gold medals in the Olympic decathlon and pentathlon, earning him the distinction of being the greatest athlete in the world. He played Major League Baseball and professional American football. He was also the president of the National Football League. In addition to Thorpe's athletic achievements, Thorpe, part Native American, often spoke on behalf of Native American rights and education. What person in the United States does not know the name Mickey Mouse? Walt Disney's most famous character made his screen debut on November 18, 1928, as star of the first sound cartoon, Steamboat Willie. The cartoon was a hit. Theaters across the nation began carrying Mickey Mouse shorts to run before their feature films. People would often sit through 2 showings just to see Mickey again before the next film. In July 1925, a biology teacher named John Scopes was charged by Tennessee with teaching the theory of evolution in a Dayton, Tennessee public school. Scopes was defended by attorney Clarence Darrow. The state of Tennessee was represented by William Jennings Bryan. The case was not perceived simply as a clear debate between evolution and creationism. Rather, there were more complicated issues involved. Darrow's position was that the scientific belief of survival of the fittest could not be legally suppressed, no matter what the consequences. Bryant, on the other hand, was fighting against the evil of social Darwinism. He believed that teaching the theory of evolution supported social Darwinism, the belief that the stronger and more intelligent people are naturally more fit to live and to subjugate weaker people. The courtroom was packed with observers in spite of the intense southern summer heat. Darrow even put Bryan on the stand to try to point out the absurdity of the antiquated law. The judge opened the trial with a prayer and then refused to allow scientific testimony or evidence. The verdict: Scopes was found guilty and fined $100. Although Scopes lost the trial, Bryan and the fundamentalist Christians looked very narrow-minded. The trial is seen today as representative of the deep division in American society between traditional religious values and new ideas based on scientific thought. However, in its day, the trial was much more about equality versus survival of the fittest. So we're going to finish up this section on the 1920s talking about fads. Fads, bell-bottoms, pet rocks, Cabbage Patch dolls, all of those were fads. And in the 1920s and 30s, fads were very popular as well. Dance marathons, popular in the 1920s and 30s, were human endurance contests. in which couples danced almost non-stop for hundreds of hours for a chance to win hundreds of dollars. Radio stations and stores saw these marathons as public relation opportunities. In response to a dare, Alvin Shipwreck Kelly sat upon a flagpole for 13 hours and 13 minutes and later set a world record by perching atop a flagpole for 7 weeks at Atlantic City's Steel Pier in the summer of 1930. Beauty pageants became popular, and the first Miss America pageant was held in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1921. Boom! That's the sound of the market crashing and the end of an affluent era in the United States history. The excesses of the roaring 20s came to an end on October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday, as the stock market hit an all-time low. Buying on the margin, or borrowing money to invest in the market, stock speculation, and investing in questionable stocks in the hopes of future windfalls brought relative newcomers to the market in record numbers. When stock prices started to drop, people began selling at record rates. As people were forced to sell at incredible losses, they began to default on loans. What had been a decade of enormous wealth quickly ended in a crash.